Hey, you're watching Impossible Color. Today is another video in the before and after series. I'm just looking at my image here in Adobe Camera Raw. If you're using Lightroom, pretty much using the exact same thing with just a different interface. So let's go over here, and I saved some snapshots, and this is the before straight out of the camera. And this one is the after. Quite a big change there. I shot this image with a flash with a warm filter, but with the after, it's pretty much adjusted out of there to white balance correct it and just give an exaggerated blue for the water. I also did a separate exposure for the dress. It just gives a little bit more detail in there that I'll be dragging into the image, and just playing around with some various color settings along the way, and ended up with this. A lot of exposure adjustments here. Obviously the white balance has been adjusted. If I went with as shot, it would be more like this. And there's some pretty big luminance adjustments here. I really wanted the model to just kind of almost glow coming out of the background, just pop, so you can see that almost the skin tones, the oranges and the yellows, have been cranked up in the illuminance. And I took out a lot of the yellow from that light. And you can see the aqua was shifted towards blue quite a bit. So let's look at that in Adobe Photoshop. This is the before and the after. You're probably seeing something big disappear over here, and a lot of changes to the skin and just the overall sharpness and look to this. It's almost taking on a painterly look, which I really like. All right, let's step into it. Looks like a lot of layers, but it's not really going to take that long. So the first thing I did was frequency separation on the skin. So if you're familiar with some of my other tutorials, you'll be able to do this very easily. My makeup series shows this step by step, and you'll see it in a lot of other videos too. So this is my low, and this is my high. And when they combine together, they're going to give those skin corrections. Then I did some skin normalization. So basically what that means is I took a color and I applied it to the skin all over, because I was getting a lot of different sources of light that was coloring the skin differently. And it does make sense. In nature, you're going to have that everywhere, but so I didn't want to just completely paint it over, but I adjusted it and toned it back a little bit, so some of the original colors were showing through. But let's just zoom in here, and you can see how this is kind of gray and blue. If I turn that off, just a lot of the twilight skies, giving that a cooler appearance where it's warmer everywhere else. Creates a little bit of tension there. So when I turn this on, balances out a bit. I still left a little bit. You can kind of still notice there's a difference, and that looks natural, but it does a lot to adjust it. There's often a little bit of redness around the nose, sometimes the chin for some people, or even under the eyes. Some differences in color, and this is just a good way to smooth that out. So then I did some color changes, and I did this in 3 steps. First one is a global color balance adjustment layer, changing the midtones, shadows, and highlights for the whole image. So you can see the reds are giving a lot more depth to the shadows. Some extra richness added everywhere. And this is selective color adjustment layer. So just one other refinement of color that brings it a little bit closer to what I'm looking for. I call it color depth. I kind of want that sense of richness, that I'm getting a full spectrum and I'm not just kind of flattening out my colors. There's a nice contrast between them. And then I just did a little color tweak. You probably don't notice the difference looking at it through a YouTube video, but I'm just picky. What's next? We've got a noise reduction pass. So we're not seeing any annoying little dots and noise and artifacts that are creeping through there. But obviously by itself, the noise reduction isn't going to work. It just kind of looks kind of smudgy. So of course you have to do a sharpen with it. And my preference for sharpening most of the time, but not always, is doing a high pass. Then I did a slight other adjustment. I went to image and I ran through the autos here just to kind of double check my colors and make sure I'm not going too crazy. So it was a slight tweak there. And then if we just zoom into the face, I did some eyeshadow. And basically I wanted the eyeshadows to kind of be a blend between the background blue and the reds of the face. So kind of a purpley brown came through, and I just felt like it tied the face into the background a lot more. The model's makeup was more intense and it did get washed out, and I really think that just added a lot more, as subtle as it is. And what else? We got some nails here. Just kind of lighten the nails here to make them look a little bit more delicate. You can see a little bit coming through on the toenails as well. Then we did a vignette. Now if you were to zoom way out, it looks pretty obvious and maybe a bit heavy-handed. But when you look at the image at actual size, I created the vignette to be really subtle. Another thing about the vignette is I set that layer to luminosity, just to make sure it's not distorting the colors in any way. So you can see if I put it to normal, it kind of grays out these colors, and it's almost like it's just painted black on top and faded off. But when it's set to luminosity, all it does is take the existing color information that's underneath and it decides, should I make this darker or lighter based on the layer above it. Then I did a high pass sharpen, just kind of one extra one on top, just to give it a little bit more pop. But when I do my high pass layers, I keep them pretty subtle. I only use, I think it's 3 as my radius or something like that, depending on the image. So with this second sharpening pass, you can see that I didn't want any of the skin included. Because a double sharpening the skin is just going to be way too much for the image. Just for fun, I also did a black and white version that I like just as much, but it gives an entirely different feel. And this adjustment was done mostly in the image adjust black and white, and you can take each individual color and slide it up and down. to give the brightness or darkness that you want. It's a good idea to do your black and whites that way and not mess around with just going image, adjust, desaturate. Now let's see, where's that at? I guess you could either go desaturate or go hue saturation and just slide it down. But it just doesn't give the richness and control that you want this way. So let's go back to the color version, have a second look, the before and the after. Thanks again for watching Impossible Color. I hope you enjoyed this before and after video. If you like what you're seeing and you want to see more of it, just click the subscribe button and you'll get notifications when new videos come in. Thanks for checking out Impossible Color. We'll see you with more of these videos really soon.